Have you ever felt like the world has already made up its mind about who you're supposed to be? Be kind, be moral, be patriotic, be a good partner, be a good worker, believe in something, anything, as long as it's not just you. Now imagine a man who looked at all of that and said no, not out of rebellion, not to shock anyone, but because he saw that behind every noble cause and every social rule was a trap, a ghost, an illusion built to control you. That man was Max Stirner, the most dangerous philosopher you've probably never heard of. He lived quietly, loved fiercely, and thought more radically than anyone before him. So radically, in fact, that Karl Marx tried to erase him. Society ignored him. And yet, his ideas survived. Today we're diving deep into the life and mind of the man women couldn't control. Because no one could, and by the end you may realize, this isn't just a story about some old German philosopher. It's a story about you. 1. The Forgotten Firebrand. Who was Max Stirner? Max Stirner was born in 1806 in Germany as Johann Caspar Schmidt. He wasn't born into wealth, nor did he live a glamorous life. In fact, by most historical accounts his life was unremarkable. A man who taught in schools, wrote a single major book, and died relatively unknown. But Stirner had a mind that burned through everything people thought was sacred. He was surrounded by some of the most influential minds of his time: Hegel, Feuerbach, Bauer, and even Karl Marx. These thinkers were trying to rebuild philosophy after the fall of religion, finding new foundations in science, reason, and socialism. But Stirner saw something they didn't. He saw that whether it was the church or the Communist Party, the human mind was always looking for something to worship, something to surrender to. And in that surrender, we give up the most precious thing we have, ourself. Stirner didn't want to be a reformer. He didn't want to save the world. He wanted to free it, by telling each person to stop serving ideas and start owning their life. 2. The Ego and Its Own, the book that dared everything. In 1844, Max Stirner released a book that would scandalize everyone around him, The Ego and Its Own. This wasn't a dry philosophical text, it was a bomb. Stirner argued that all values, religion, morality, humanism, even love, are built on illusions. They're what he called spooks, mental constructs that don't exist, but still rule over our lives. Think of humanity, nation, duty, or truth. Stirner asked, where are these things? Can you touch them, smell them? No, they're ghosts, and yet we obey them. He didn't mean you shouldn't care about others or have beliefs, but he warned that as soon as an idea becomes more important than your own lived experience, it becomes your master. The moment you say, I must do this for love, for God, for the greater good, you're no longer living for yourself, you're serving a phantom. Stirner's book didn't call people to become evil or selfish in the usual sense. It called them to become free. It taught that if you truly own yourself, not as an idea, but as a living force, then and only then can you choose how to relate to others without being dominated. 3. Stirner versus society, the philosopher everyone feared. Stirner's ideas didn't just challenge religious dogma, they threatened the very foundation of society. If everyone lived purely by their own power and will, who would follow the laws? Who would go to war? Who would stay in their place? That's why his book was treated like radioactive material. Karl Marx, who had once debated with Stirner in Berlin's radical salons, was so disturbed by him that he co-authored an enormous rebuttal, over 300 pages, attacking Stirner's work line by line. This wasn't just intellectual disagreement, it was fear. Why? Because Stirner exposed something Marx couldn't deny, that even revolutionaries worship their own kind of gods. For Marx, it was history and the proletariat. For Christians, it was God and heaven. For liberals, it was rights and progress. Stirner looked them all in the face and said, "You're still slaves." He didn't offer a new system, no new utopia, no collective identity to join. Stirner offered only the raw, terrifying freedom of being an individual with no one to blame and nothing to hide behind. It was too much for most to handle. 4. Love, women, and why Stirner couldn't be owned. Max Stirner married twice. His second wife, Marie Donhart, was intelligent, independent, and even inspired his writing. But even she eventually left him. Why? Because Stirner refused to be owned, even by love. He saw relationships not as holy bonds, but as associations between individuals, and only valid for as long as both people freely chose them. The moment love became a duty, or demanded self-sacrifice, he saw it as another spook. That's why he's called the man women couldn't control, not because he was a woman-hater, but because he wouldn't surrender his identity to anyone, no matter how intimate the connection. Even love, in his view, was only real if it was voluntary. Not an obligation, not a chain, and never a compromise of the self. In today's world, where people lose themselves in codependent relationships or try to complete themselves through others, Stirner's view may seem cold, but it carries a deep truth. If you don't own yourself first, you have nothing real to offer anyone else. 5. The secret wisdom of the creative nothing. Perhaps the most mysterious and profound part of Stirner's philosophy is the idea of the creative nothing. He said, "I am the owner of my might, and I am so when I know myself as unique. In this alone is my nothingness, but also my creativity." It sounds strange, but here's what it means. Beneath all the identities, labels, and ideas we cling to, there is just you, not as an object, not as a title, but as a living force. You are not your name. You are not your job. You are not your beliefs. You are a creative nothing, empty of definitions, but full of the power to create your life moment by moment. This is not comfortable philosophy. It doesn't give you rules. It doesn't offer heaven. It tells you, no one is coming to save you. You are alone, and yet, totally free. That's the secret. Stirner's freedom is not about doing whatever you want. It's about realizing that you are not bound by anything unless you allow it. You are not a victim of destiny. You are its author. 6. Why Stirner still matters, and why you're not supposed to know him. It's no accident that Max Stirner is rarely mentioned in schools, universities, or even among popular internet philosophers. You'll hear about Nietzsche, Marx, or Foucault before Stirner ever makes the list. And yet, in many ways, his philosophy was more radical, more unfiltered, and more dangerous than all of them. Why? Because Stirner didn't offer a new political system, a utopia, or a spiritual truth. He didn't tell you how to live. He told you that you must create your life entirely on your own terms. That's terrifying to institutions built on obedience. Governments, religions, and even modern ideologies survive by offering people meaning, and in return, asking for loyalty. Stirner destroyed that transaction. He dared to say, no cause, no idea, no collective is worth more than your individual self. That kind of thinking doesn't produce good citizens. It doesn't produce loyal followers. It produces sovereign individuals, people who don't bow to abstract ideals, people who think twice before signing away their time, attention, or beliefs. In a world where control is the currency of power, Max Stirner is poison to the status quo, and that's exactly why you've never been taught about him. But Stirner isn't just relevant because he's subversive. He's relevant because the modern world is full of spooks, maybe more than ever. Think about it. Every day we're bombarded by ideologies, group identities, and brand philosophies telling us who we are and what we should care about. People define themselves by politics, sexuality, religion, diet, even their favorite tech brands. Social media encourages you to perform a version of yourself that fits a tribe. Stirner challenges all of it. He says if you're living to please a label, even one you chose, you're still not free. His wisdom shows up in the most unexpected ways. The quiet moment when you ask yourself, do I actually believe this? Or was I just told to believe it? The discomfort you feel when you realize you've built your life around things that don't actually serve you. That's the ghost in the machine. That's the spook haunting your decisions. Stirner gives you the language and the courage to see it. But he doesn't stop at criticism. He offers an alternative, not nihilism but self-possession, owning your thoughts, owning your voice, owning your time. He invites you to stop playing roles and start living as a conscious, unique being, not defined by anything except your own experience. That's why Stirner still matters. Not because he built a school of thought, not because he's quoted by influencers, but because his philosophy is a quiet, permanent revolution in your own mind. The kind of revolution you can't unsee once you've felt it. It doesn't make you famous, it makes you free. And maybe that's the most dangerous thing of all. So now the question isn't, who was Max Stirner? The question is, who are you when no one's watching? When there's nothing to believe in but yourself? When there's no one left to blame, no cause left to fight for, and no mask left to wear? Are you just a servant of spooks? Or are you finally ready to become what Stirner called the owner of your own might? If this shook something in you, don't look away. This is just the beginning. Like, comment, share this with a seeker, and hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started uncovering the hidden minds that can set you free.